Week 11 was fantastic. We saw a lot of high-level football being played. Offenses went off. Defenses showed up and showed out and locked down the opponents. And all in all, I was very pleased with the on-field product this week. Starting things off, though, a very large minority of people in our comment sections on TikTok were not pleased with my co-host's prediction that the Pittsburgh Steelers were going to get beat by 2 scores by the Baltimore Ravens. That did not happen. The Steelers won a gritty, hard-fought defensive battle. And what this game tells me, I have faith in the Ravens offense to show up, and their defense, much like they did against Buffalo, really performed very well, only allowed 6 field goals. You can win games doing that, but this Steelers defense is legit. It's one of the 2 best in football. It can win the Steelers a Super Bowl. If you can beat the, and I quote, best offense in history, according to some people from a statistical standpoint, and only allow them to score 16 points, you can do that to pretty much anybody. This Steelers team, its ceiling just went a whole lot higher for me. This team could come out of the AFC, could represent the conference, and could win a Super Bowl. Their defense is that good. Offense obviously left a lot to be desired. Part of that is them not playing great. Another part of that is the Ravens defense playing their best game of the season. And, what do you have to say, Tris? Do you have the apology the Steelers fans are asking for being so woefully wrong?
I understand why I upset the Steelers faithful because I predicted them to lose each of the last 2 weeks. But if you were going to victory lap, a 1-point win against the Commanders and a 2-point win against the Ravens, in which the Ravens kicker missed 2 field goals, you didn't even score an offensive touchdown, and your offense did not look good, be my guest. There is nothing I need to apologize for because the offense is bad. Your quarterback had an opportunity to effectively end the game with a touchdown, or if he just throws the ball out of the back of the end zone, kick an easy field goal that puts the Steelers up by 8 points at that point of the game, which in a game where points were very hard to come by, that meant a lot. Instead, he handed the ball right back to the Ravens. The Ravens, unfortunately, threw an interception to the Steelers defense, which was an incredible play by Peyton Wilson, which leads me to where I was wrong about the Steelers, because while I'm not going to apologize, I was wrong about just how good their defense is. This defense held one of the best offenses of all time during the regular season to just 16 points. They only scored 2 touchdowns. They forced 2 turnovers, so very good job by the Steelers defense. But if you are super excited and circling the wagons for a victory lap over a 2-point victory against a team that had 2 missed field goals, I don't know what to tell you.
I know what to tell you. You clearly do not pay attention to the rich Baltimore Ravens rivalry. Excuse me, the Steelers-Baltimore Ravens rivalry. That's how these games go. These games are defensive wars. They're low scoring, and you harp on that one mistake Russell Wilson made. All in all, the Ravens defense, if you go back and watch the game beyond the highlights, they played very well. They were incredibly disciplined. The run defense, as we all know, is great, but that passing defense without Kyle Hamilton really stepped up. A huge part of their success in keeping the Steelers from cracking 20 is because of how well their secondary played. That's not on the Steelers offense. That's on a quality, talented unit rising to the occasion, which they just haven't all year. This team still has big names on the defensive side of the ball. They can still lock in and make plays when they need to. They still invested first-round draft capital on that secondary. I think you're being a hater. I think you're being wrong. And the Steelers fans are absolutely right to victory lap this because now they've got a 2-game lead in the division. They've beaten the Ravens once. Even if the Ravens pick them off down the stretch, their path to an AFC North title is looking real easy. The Steelers fans should be excited. They're a contender, and you are simply a hater in my opinion.
So is it that a defense that has been historically bad against the pass, bottom 10 scoring defense, is it that their defense all of a sudden played good?
Tristan,
or is it that an underwhelming offense that hasn't been great all season long and really is only beat up on bad opponents did not show up? I think it is the latter of these two options.
I think you're completely wrong. Tristan, the Ravens dominated the Bills from a defensive side of the ball. Part of that's Josh Allen turning the ball over, sure, but this defense has shown up in spots, particularly against good opponents. They had a pretty decent performance against the Chiefs week 1 when they had Rashee Rice. They had a great performance against the Bills, and now against the Steelers, they've had another great performance. This defense is rising to the occasion. If you're a Ravens fan, you can take that away from this game. Like, hey, we have been struggling most of the year defensively, but when the games really matter, aka when the playoffs roll around, our defense is performing much better. So I don't think you bury your head in the sand if you're a Ravens fan on this one, but try and sit here and snipe at the Steelers, man. It hurts my soul. It's sickening to me. It is a disappointing side of the Thicc Manning brand. It's me personally who feels this way. You can feel however you want.
The Steelers defense, I will once again say, is very good and puts them in contention to win a couple of playoff games. But if you're a Steelers fan over the last 3 weeks that is excited about this offense and what they're able to accomplish, only passing for 200 yards against a defense that over the course of a large sample size, 10 games, we're giving up the close to 300 yards passing a game, I don't think that's something to all of a sudden get excited on the offensive side of the ball about. And if this great defense falters in the playoffs, a team with a better offense is going to beat them.
30 points a game the last month before this game.
Their defense,
undefeated with Russell Wilson as a starting quarterback, but sure.
They beat the Giants. They beat
the Baltimore Ravens. Anyway, since we have not talked too much about the Ravens offense, Lamar Jackson, absolute stinker. Now I think he is second place in the MVP betting odds. I'm not sure if those have fully flipped yet. But Josh Allen, as I predicted, has retaken his spot at the head of the table after a dominant performance over the Kansas City Chiefs. In that dominant performance, the box score doesn't truly reflect how much Josh Allen was doing. He was his team's rushing offense. He was his team's passing offense. With injured players, a beat-up unit, he still dropped 30 on this Chiefs team, which is not allowed more than 28 points in the past year and a half. Josh Allen was sensational this game. There's no two ways about it. This is the MVP. This is the most valuable player in football. This is arguably the best player in football. And it takes this type of effort to knock off the formerly undefeated Kansas City Chiefs. Great game for the Buffalo Bills. Now they just need the Chargers, the Broncos, or the Steelers to knock off Kansas City. They need to win out, and they will have the 1-seed home field advantage and the first round bye in the playoffs. If you're a Bills fan, you should deservedly be excited about this one. Great performance. And really, the defense, also a phenomenal job. 22 points or 21 points to this Chiefs team. Not too bad, not too shabby. I know they're injured, but Buffalo, be excited.
I know I predicted the Chiefs to win this game, but the outcome is not all that surprising. We've seen the Bills beat the Chiefs in the regular season before. This is not some rivalry where the Chiefs are the only one ever winning. So the outcome, not that surprising, but when it comes down to the quality of the game, it was just a good football game where the Bills came out on top, at least from my perspective. They got an early turnover against Patrick Mahomes and never looked back from there. The Chiefs just made one or two mistakes that led to the Bills having the upper hand, and on fourth down late in the game where in the past maybe they've made a mistake or we see the Chiefs have another opportunity to come back and win, they executed, and Josh Allen ran down the field for, I think it was 27 yards, somewhere around there, and scored the go-ahead game-sealing touchdown. So credit for the Bills for playing a complete football game, which they sometimes don't do. And on the Chiefs side of things, I'm not really worried at all. I think we still know their defense is very good. Their offense has been what it was all year long. The run game was pretty solid against this Bills team. The pass game, Travis Kelce did not exactly get going, but I don't think it was glaring in your face. It sucks all of a sudden. The only thing that the Chiefs really have to worry about, I think, is their tackle play, which you spoke to in that TikTok video you made.
Their tackle play's terrible. Hollywood Brown might be coming back. I'm skeptical given the injury. Rashee Rice is definitely done for the year. This team does nothing after contact, after the catch. Travis Kelce can get open against zone, but if you get someone who can actually follow him in man like the Bills had, he's not a factor. He can be taken out of games now. He's not what he used to be. He's slow. Diop, very good route runner, a little bit of explosiveness. He's slow. He gets tackled. He does not break away. If he's catching a touchdown, he's probably getting the ball in the end zone. So I just would not be overly optimistic about this Chiefs offense. I don't see them getting better as the year goes on. Maybe you get some players back, but the more games D-Hop, the more games Kelce, Isaiah Pacheco with a metal plate in his ankle, the more that goes on, the more likely they are to sustain an injury. With how bad their tackle play is, Mahomes, who's already been hobbled once this year, also likely to pick up some nagging injury which just knocks them off. This team is too old and too injured to really compete, in my opinion. They're going to probably make the division round, certainly make the division round, maybe the conference championship, but I just don't see them coming out of the AFC.
I'm not going to bet against the Chiefs because I think players are going to get injured. I don't think that's fair to them because we could do that with any team in the NFL. We know there's several teams struggling with injuries. So I'm not going to say it's a guarantee Travis Kelce's going to get hurt because he's a little bit older, or that Patrick Mahomes is going to get hurt because of the tackle play.
I mean, I think there's a fundamental difference between saying, oh, well, if the Lions lost to Amon-Ra St. Brown, Jahmyr Gibbs, and Penei Sewell, who are all young guys who have not dealt with injuries to a high level in the past, they're done. There's a difference between saying that and saying the team who's super reliant on 32-plus-year-olds and guys who are already hurt. There's a difference there. You can't just hand wave it and say, well, every team gets hurt. It's not
a healthy player is a healthy player. And right now, all of those players have made it 11 games through the season healthy. And coming away from this game, I think we saw two teams that can win the Super Bowl. I think it would be a coin flip if they met again in the playoffs, whether that be the divisional or conference championship
Careful
game.
with that choice of words for the Bills fans listening. By the way, they don't like mentioning coin flips.
That is a fair point there. Rubbing a little bit of salt in the wound.
A little bit of salt in the wound.
Well, they probably wouldn't meet in the divisional since they'd probably be the 1 and 2 seed respectively.
Hard to say. Broncos could just win out, man. Knock the Chiefs off.
You never know. I don't know. I left the game thinking both teams are really good. And that the Bills, maybe they're the favorite, maybe they're not. Who knows?
I mean, I'd say the Lions are the favorite right now, but beating up on trash cans is a uniquely Houston Astros maneuver, so a win over the Jaguars doesn't really get my jimmies jostled. Keeping it in this game, though, I think the biggest story, the lasting effect this game will have on the season is Josh Allen has retaken the lead in the MVP race. This is the most valuable player in football. You cannot watch that Bills game and say, oh, well, someone else stepped up. It wasn't clear as day that Josh Allen was the Bills' offense, was the one making plays, was the one scoring the 26-yard game-winning touchdown. And for Lamar, he's going to get beat up on the win-loss standpoint because the Ravens have at least one, maybe three more losses in them. He's going to be a 6, 7 seed. That hurts. The Bills are going to be the 1 seed. And it's clear as day. You could take Lamar Jackson off this Ravens offense with everything they have and with the health they've been blessed with this year, they would still be pretty good. If you took Josh Allen off this Bills team, I think they're maybe the worst offense in football. It would be pretty pathetic. I know James Cook helps the running game, but those receivers really have not lived up to the hype. When you watch the routes they run, the balls they're catching, a whole lot of leg work and arm work is being done by Josh Allen. Can't say the same thing for the Ravens. Can't say the same thing for Lamar Jackson. It's no slight on Lamar, but he's not winning his third if the current trends continue.
I kind of disagree that he's clearly leading the race at this point. I think he gained a lot of ground on Lamar and even made the race even. It is going to depend largely on what we see over the course of the rest of the season, because the points he has over Lamar is that he now has a chance at the 1 seed. If he wins out, his team has only lost 2 games. The Ravens have lost 4 games. And when you look at the last 3 MVP winners, all 3 of those MVPs, their team was tied for the best record in the NFL. So that is certainly not on Lamar's side. But then when you take a look at the stats, assuming they continue at similar paces, Lamar is going to have by far the better statistical season. And while Lamar played poorly against the Steelers this past weekend, Josh Allen has 2 complete stinkers this year as well that happened earlier in the year against the Texans and ultimately against the Ravens. So due to that, I think it's kind of an even race at this point, and it ultimately matters more what they do over the last few games and how many games the Ravens still lose and if the Bills go undefeated down the stretch.
Yeah, only the 2 stinkers you point out is better to have those win Josh Allen did from an MVP standpoint than to have Lamar's disaster classes like he had. Lamar also has to go and play the Steelers again. His schedule only gets harder. The Bills' schedule, outside of a trip to Detroit, I don't think it is that bad. It is set up for Allen to succeed, only pick up 1 more loss, worst case scenario, unless the wheels fall off. I'm much more inclined to pick Josh Allen to win the MVP right now. Not exactly a controversial take, but
sticking with a team that is in the AFC North, they just played on Monday Night Football. The Bengals lost to the Los Angeles Chargers, and through the first half, it looked like they were going to get ran off the field with how good Justin Herbert was playing and how high of a level that offense was operating at. But then in the second half, Joe Burrow got things going, got the ball out to Jamar Chase, got the ball out to T. Higgins, and that offense was functioning at a high level. Unfortunately, they still lost the game. And many are going to say that the Bengals are cooked. They have no chance at the playoffs. But fortunately for them, they still have an opportunity to make the playoffs if they win out or only lose 1 more game. Because you take a look at their remaining opponents, and they play the Steelers two more times, unfortunately. The Broncos, Browns, Titans, and Cowboys. Cowboys is a guaranteed win. Titans, we can write that in for a win. I feel like they'd probably beat the Browns, so that is 3 there. Broncos is kind of where their season comes down to if they're able to win those other games, and ultimately they'd have to split with the Steelers. So while I don't think it'd be likely to happen, because I don't know how this team would be able to keep up with that Steelers defense and what the Steelers offense is capable of. They've shown they're capable of putting up enough points on offense. But if they split with the Steelers and beat the Cowboys, Titans, and Browns, and then beat the Broncos, they would have the tiebreaker over the Broncos, and then they'd get in as the 7th seed.
I'll summarize it for you. They're not getting in. Point blank, period. Their defense is still horrible. Justin Herbert played one of his best games of football ever in the first half alone. That is a product of him being great, certainly, him having a great head coach in Jim Harbaugh, but him playing a woeful defense. That defense is going to get lit up by Russell Wilson and Bo Nix. I have no faith in this Bengals offense to be able to outscore the Steelers and the Broncos when they play each other, particularly with how good those two defenses are. It's just not happening. We saw what the Eagles did to this team. They folded them in half. I think the Broncos and the Steelers are very comparable to the Eagles. Really high-end defenses, somewhat mid-offenses with star players. It's just not happening. They're done. The Bengals season is over. They're not making the playoffs. They're going to have to fire Zach Taylor, and they probably go after Ben Johnson. But I don't know if Ben Johnson wants to go to this dysfunctional Bengals organization with an owner who you give Tepper a lot of crap. The Bengals owner, something Brown, literally cannot afford to pay his players, pay his coaches. That man is broke. This organization is in shambles, and they need to tear it all down. The sooner, the better.
I don't think...
Haven't extended Jamar Chase. I mean, what do you want them to do? They don't have the money to extend Jamar Chase.
I don't think they're going to fire their head coach because the offense, he's an offensive guy, has been phenomenal this season, and their failures are more given the fact their general manager and front office didn't replace pieces they lost on the defensive side of the ball. So I don't know if that's...
The offense has been fantastic because it's Jamar Chase, Joe Burrow, and T. Higgins. Like, I could coach a pretty good offense with those three. Let's be honest here. Their running game's terrible.
I wouldn't say that.
We're running 2 verts, baby.
I don't know if I would say that, but it's more of a personnel failure on the defensive side of the ball, in my opinion, than even necessarily a coaching failure. And we've seen the Bengals in the past. They're not ones to move off of coaches pretty quickly. And unless their franchise quarterback, Joe Burrow, wants Zach Taylor out of there and goes to the owner and says, I want someone new in the building, I don't think that's super likely.
Also, some pretty unfortunate mismanagement from Taylor in the end of the Chargers game. We don't need to drone on about Zach Taylor. I don't have too much to say about the Chargers. They're a pretty good team. I don't know if I put them quite in that top tier contender range, but they're in the same category as a team like the Vikings, who's just kind of right below that Lions, Bengals, Chiefs tier. Anyway, moving on. I'll let you intro the rookie quarterbacks. I know how you like the youngins.
All 4 of them had good games this past weekend?
I don't know about Jayden Daniels, man. I don't know about Jayden Daniels. He didn't play over the weekend, but let's not
I
get
mean,
ahead
it wasn't
of ourselves.
horrific. It wasn't a disaster class like we've seen from Caleb Williams several times this season, who had a great game. And this Bears offense, they involved DJ more in the game plan. He had more targets. They let him run after the catch more, which you love to see. Caleb Williams actually used his athleticism to his advantage and ran for 70 yards on the Packers defense. They got him some easy completions, and this version of Caleb Williams is a Caleb Williams you want to see week in and week out. It is why he was drafted number 1 overall, and you hope that he can be this more consistently so he can continue to develop other elements of his game. But we've seen more bad than good from him this season. With a good game, you have to be encouraged that there hopefully is more good to come.
Hey, it's certainly better than last week against the Patriots or the week before against Arizona. He scored a touchdown. Should have won this game if not for his idiot kicker not being able to finish, having a low launch angle. But the problem is the Packers don't have a good front seven. I've said it. I'll keep saying it. That unit's not special. The real talent on their defense is in their secondary. That front seven did not generate a ton of pressure on the Bears offensive line. It gave Caleb Williams a lot of time. And Caleb Williams, to his credit, did not just hold the ball and hold the ball and hold the ball like he did against the Patriots. He stepped up, made some throws, and got on the move. I wouldn't be overly encouraged. This has not vastly changed my opinion about Caleb Williams. Kind of feels like his games against the Jaguars and the Panthers, where he's taking advantage of his opponent's lack of defensive play calling ability, lack of talent on the front seven and the pass rush to really just decimate a defense.
And you mentioned it, I didn't really get into it, but that 3-minute drive he had to drive down the field, put his team in a position to win. They're running the ball to put their kicker in what he feels is a better position for him to kick the game-winning field goal. So I think that is probably the most encouraging thing from this performance, the ability to lead a 2-minute drive. Ultimately, we need a larger sample size of quality performances to start feeling really strongly about Caleb Williams.
Yeah, it's going to take a lot. I don't know if he can change my opinion of him as the season goes on. If he performs well against the Vikings, one of the most aggressive defenses in football, then I might be moved, but have to wait and see. He gets 2 cracks at him, so best of luck to him. Bouncing over to the Patriots game, Drake Maye, from an eye test standpoint, from a QBR standpoint, from an EPA standpoint, whatever standpoint you want to go with, he looked really good. The box score doesn't quite reflect it. This was one of the better rookie quarterback performances of the year. He stood up to pressure very well, completed the balls he needed to, kept the Patriots offense in this game when they had no business being there. And another really encouraging game from him.
Drake Maye has jumped off the TV screen this season if you have had the misfortune of watching any Patriots game, because this team is devoid of talent on the offensive side of the ball. He's the only thing they really have going for him. And when you complete 30 of 40 passes against the Rams defense, you have passes bouncing off your receiver's hands. The interception he threw high over the middle of the field, if that is an elite #1 receiver that actually is his head turned towards the quarterback, they're high pointing that ball, and that's a completion rather than an interception going the other way. So I think this has been an incredibly impressive performance from Drake Maye. I think in the games where maybe he has played a little poorly or made some rookie mistakes, he has shown some great flashes. And the only question now, if you're a Patriots fan or looking at Drake Maye's future, is Jerod Mayo the right head coach to lead the Patriots back to the playoffs? Can their front office put together a quality wide receiver room and offensive line in front of Drake Maye? And those are much more pressing questions than whether or not Drake Maye is the guy.
Yeah, Jerod Mayo is certainly getting a few more years. I don't know where the hate for him's coming from there. This Rams offense,
that's not
it kind of felt like, oh, is Jerod Mayo the right answer? That feels like it's baiting a question we don't need to be asking yet. This Patriots team could conceivably be 0-11. Their defense, ever since they've lost players due to trades, injuries, suspensions, whatever, it's not that talented. Them keeping the Rams under 30 is actually kind of impressive to me. Leaving out the safety is the same score they had against the Vikings, who are regarded as one of the best defenses in football. Mayo's the answer. Maye's the answer. Great day for Ims in New England. Moving things on over, a quarterback who is reinserting himself into the offensive rookie of the year race. I've said some negative things about Bo Nix. I'll keep saying it. Think he's limited as an athlete, limited as a passer, struggles to pick apart teams over the middle. He had a very good game against the Falcons. I will give credit where credit is due. Part of that's game plan, part of that's scheme, part of that's the Falcons just falling apart at Mile High Stadium. But Bo Nix completed the passes he needed to. Phenomenal statistical performance, phenomenal EPA performance, phenomenal eye test performance. His best game of the year by far. It's so good, it's actually got him somewhat close to Jayden Daniels. Within spitting distance of Jayden Daniels for the offensive rookie of the year. If the current trends continue of Daniels kind of struggling and Bo Nix playing well, I could even see him winning it. Good for him. It'll be Sean Payton's offensive rookie of the year, which will make me sick to my stomach. But on
where's the apology, Isaiah?
The apology is, I'm sorry you think you've got something. We have seen Bo Nix's ceiling. You know, we call that game against the Falcons, we call that peaking.
Bo Nix, he certainly looked very good against the Falcons. He made some high-level throws, once again looked like an above-average athlete running the football from the quarterback position. But I think when you take a look at the overall performance and Bo Nix's season so far, we see the benefit of a young quarterback having an elite offensive mind scheming up a game plan for him. Because in all 4 of his touchdowns, 2 of them are screen passes. The 2 other ones are play action passes where the receiver is running wide open with no defender really within 5 to 10 yards of him. He completes the pass, the receiver runs down the field and scores the touchdown. So he's had some easy completions schemed up for him. Credit to him. He's made those completions and thrown accurate footballs and he's reading the field. But I think what we've seen from the Broncos is the extreme benefit of having an elite offensive mind as your coordinator.
Yeah, Sean Payton, great guy, great offensive coordinator. Unfortunately, he will not be hoisting the Rookie of the Year hardware. That's still going to be Jayden Daniels. But Jayden Daniels has been struggling the past 3 games. Obviously, not a great performance, around 200 total yards, not much of a threat on the ground against the Eagles. Steelers completely locked him down in that fourth quarter, made him make mistakes. And against the Giants, not a special performance either by any stretch of the imagination. Barely beat Daniel Jones. I think he's still the best rookie quarterback so far. I think he has had a great season up to date, and he's played two really good defenses and a really good pass rush in his last 3 games. I'm not soured on him by these performances. I'm not turned off of Jayden Daniels' ability to lead an NFL franchise. I'm not turning my opinion around on Cliff Kingsbury. I think he's still a very good offensive mind, but this team has been injured. Jayden Daniels is dealing with a rib injury, and they played 2 of the best 5 defenses in football the past 2 weeks. He is going to struggle. He's a rookie quarterback. If you throw Bo Nix at this Steelers or at this Eagles defense, well, we saw it happen with the Steelers. We know what happened with the Eagles. They would shut him down. It's just a different level of competition, and Daniels struggling is to be expected.
Jayden Daniels, to me, is still clearly the most talented and best quarterback, especially when he's healthy. I think the problem we've seen over the last 3 weeks is that the run game from him has kind of disappeared due to the injury that he's dealing with, whether that be play calling because they don't want him to run the ball as much to protect him a little bit, whether that's him not being as prone to run because he knows he's dealing with that rib injury. And I think what this rib injury has kind of exposed is that when you lose the super high-end talent that Jayden Daniels provides in the run game, the Commanders just don't have enough talent at the wide receiver position to make up for that. Because last week against the Eagles took Terry McLaurin out of the game, and they were forced to throw the ball to Zach Ertz, who was productive, and then John Bates was their second leading receiver, and I think Austin Eckler, he had a great, I think 9 catches, 80 yards. But when your second receiving running back, your old tight end, and your backup tight end are your leading receivers, when your team shuts down your number 1 receiver, I think that's a little concerning.
You're not stretching the field at all. Everything is short and quick, and that's kind of how the Commanders run things, but you need something else downfield.
Exactly, and they just, at this point, don't have enough wide receiver talent to threaten defenses down the field from multiple positions on the field.
Yeah, it's definitely an area you want to look at. Another thing they might consider moving forward, their tackle play has still not been good in my opinion. Some people disagree. The Commanders faithful has drunk the Kool-Aid on that position. That should be one of the 2 targets in this year's draft. They need to either get a real deal, high-level number 1 receiver to put alongside Terry McLaurin, or they need to get a solid franchise left tackle to mature and grow and play with Jayden Daniels for the next decade or so. That's got to be the focus. Defensively, I would rather this team build up through free agency or later round picks. We saw they got with Mikey Sanders still. They've got some really underrated free agent signings who were laughed at the time, but Bobby Wagner's playing some good football. Still got some areas of weakness in coverage, but he's one of the best run-defending linebackers in the league right now. I have faith this Commanders team can build towards the future, but all in all, the roster's not ready yet. They're not a contender. Talking about the Eagles briefly since we're here, I think they're legit. I think they have won every game since their bye week. Their 2 losses on the year were a fluky week 2 game against the Falcons where Kirk Cousins drives down the field and scores the game-winning touchdown to Drake London, and a game against the Buccaneers where they were injured, and against a team who matches up really well with them based off how great Vita Vea is on the inside. This is the second best team, third best team in the NFC in my opinion. They're in the same tier as the Lions, hanging around with the Vikings. They're a very good football team. The offense has not been as flashy as you might like it to be, considering it's got Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, but they have been hitting deep balls. Jalen Hurts hasn't been making many mistakes. 1 interception in the last 6 games is incredibly impressive, and when you just grind up against an opponent, you can break them over the course of a 4-quarter game. We've been seeing it with Derrick Henry, where he'd been kind of kept in check the first 3 quarters and just cranks one out towards the end and makes his overall box score look completely different. It's kind of the same with Saquon. No team can sustain this offensive line, Saquon Barkley, and Jalen Hurts running at them for 4 quarters. They are going to win a lot of games, and they are perfectly built for a playoff run. Unless you have zero faith in Sirianni, which you don't, you think this team can go places.
I'll get to talking about their offense in a second, but I think the thing that's really exciting about this Eagles team, if you're a fan of them or if you want to be optimistic about them heading into the playoffs, is at the beginning of the year, their defense did not look great. They looked more of the same from what we saw last season. But as the season has progressed, we have seen their defense become dominant. Their front 7, again, led by Jalen Carter, has been getting to the quarterback. They've been good against the run, and they've been one of the better defenses in the NFL as we head towards the playoffs, which you need a great defense in order to make serious waves come playoff time. The only thing where I still have concerns about the Eagles is their offense. When they get in a situation where the other team is actually stopping Saquon Barkley, is stopping Jalen Hurts in the run, and they get to some consistent third and longs, do they have the pass plays available to them to convert on third down consistently? Because what we've seen from their wide receiver position and their passing game is that they have more big play ability rather than the consistency of hitting checkdowns, hitting intermediate routes, and picking defenses apart and moving down the field that way. It's been Saquon in the run, Jalen Hurts in the run, and then a couple big plays from A.J. Brown or Devonta Smith. How consistent is that when a team is forcing you into more third and long situations? But that's really my only concern with this team. Talent is not the question.
I think you saying them in third long is a bad thing. Yeah, most teams are bad in third and long. How often are they consistently getting put in third and long late in games with Saquon Barkley getting carries on the first two series? I don't think it's going to happen. It's not happening much. And even when it does, they're foregoing some of that guaranteed success with a check down, out route, drag slot, whatever. They're foregoing that for the sake of the long ball. I'm not worried about this team. I think the only issue they could run into is getting out-talented and out-offensive coached by Ben Johnson. Lions defense has been playing very well the past month and a half against lesser opponents. I don't know. I cannot see a team like the Vikings, the Commanders, seriously challenging them.
Well, point being is, I mean, there's a reason they're the second best team in the NFC. I think I would upgrade them to that from what we've seen from their defense and their run game. But if a team forces them into a shootout, like the Lions, who have shown they can air teams out, or if a team, even like the Rams, get into a good game with this Eagles team where Matthew Stafford is airing it out, can they keep up when the game progresses to a shootout and they have to throw the ball 30, 40 times?
I think the assumption that you're going to have to score a ton of points to win a playoff game is not a good one, to be frank. It's
not an assumption.
Playoff football outside in Philadelphia. It's probably not going to be super high scoring, particularly when you're rocking in one of the 5 best defenses in football. This team wins rock fights. They're not going to let you turn it into a nuclear missile shooting contest. It's just not happening.
I feel a little bit similar about the Eagles how I do with the Ravens, where there's a path to victory where you can beat these teams. Now, the Eagles have a much better defense, but with the Ravens, when they are on, they are unbeatable. When the Eagles are on, they are unbeatable. But we have seen points over the last 2 years where when these teams aren't on and they have a tendency to do it, they become very beatable and not great football teams.
One of those teams has twice as many losses as the other. I think comparing the Eagles to the Ravens is apples to apples. Birds of a feather are not flocking together with that one.
That has been our Week 11 reactions. Let us know what you think down in the comments below. Are the Steelers a Super Bowl contender? Use code Thicc on Underdog. It gets you bonus cash up to $1,000. Like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.